You may think manifestation takes years, but I tell you, in 35 minutes you can lay hold of the life you desire. Why 35 minutes? Because in less than an hour, if you direct your imagination with intensity and faith, you impress the subconscious, the true builder of your world. The secret lies not in time, but in focus. In those 35 minutes, detach from appearances. Close your eyes to the outer world and inwardly enter the scene of your wish fulfilled. Do not observe yourself wanting it, but live in the end of already having it. If it is wealth, feel the freedom of abundance. If it is love, rest in the joy of union. If it is success, carry the certainty of accomplishment. The world will conform to that inner knowing. Persist for those sacred minutes, for they are enough. See only the state you desire. Speak inwardly as though it were done, and feel the reality of it so fully that the outer world fades. This simple act impresses your subconscious mind, and once impressed, it must externalize. Do not measure by hours or days. The moment you truly assume creation is complete, your work is not to beg, but to believe. Your task is not to watch the clock, but to saturate your inner vision. Give 35 minutes of undivided attention to your wish fulfilled, and you will find the outer world bending, circumstances reshaping, and life reflecting the state you have chosen. So tonight, give yourself those 35 minutes. Enter the end boldly. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and walk forth knowing it is already yours. 35 minutes of focused imagination can transform your life, because in that sacred space of stillness, you step beyond appearances and enter into creation itself. When you withdraw your attention from the noise of the outer world and direct it with intensity toward the scene of your desire fulfilled, you impress the subconscious mind with a new pattern of reality. This brief period of deep inward absorption is enough to shift the entire course of your life, for what you assume inwardly must one day appear outwardly. And in those minutes you are planting seeds of destiny. Time itself doesn't manifest. Faith and focus do. For time is only a construct of the human mind, while creation exists outside of it. You may wait days, months, or even years, but if you are waiting with doubt, nothing is born from that waiting. What moves mountains, what reshapes circumstances, what calls forth unseen resources is not the passage of hours, but the concentrated belief you hold in the present moment. Faith is the invisible hand that carries your desire from imagination into form, and focus is the channel through which that power flows. When you allow your mind to dwell undistracted on the end you desire, when you refuse to be swayed by appearances, you are declaring to the subconscious that this is your truth, and the subconscious, being infinite and impartial, accepts it as law. It is not the ticking of the clock that brings about the change, but the intensity of your assumption and the depth of your conviction. The moment you truly believe and see within, the manifestation is already secured, and outer reality simply plays catch up to the inner decree, detached from appearances. Close your eyes to the outer world, for the outer world is nothing but a mirror of past beliefs, past assumptions, and past states of consciousness. If you judge your life only by what you see with your physical eyes, you remain trapped in yesterday's creations, repeating cycles that no longer serve you. But when you turn inward, when you deliberately shut out the noise of circumstances and the evidence of the senses, you open the door to true creation. In that inner silence, the imagination awakens, and imagination is the only reality. What you hold within will clothe itself without. To detach does not mean to ignore life, but to see beyond the illusion of it. It means recognizing that appearances are temporary shadows cast by inner states. By closing your eyes to the outer world, you reclaim authority over your destiny, no longer reacting to what is, but consciously shaping what will be. Every great change begins in the unseen, and your inner vision is the workshop where the new world is built. When you practice this detachment, you stand unmoved by facts, knowing they are merely old stories dissolving. You walk in faith, dwelling in the end of your desire, feeling it real until it becomes so. In that moment, you free yourself from the prison of appearances and step into the power of deliberate creation, live in the end, not in the desire, for desire itself implies lack, and lack only repeats itself when you dwell upon it. To desire is to acknowledge that you do not yet have, but to live in the end is to claim that it is already yours. The secret of creation lies in assuming the state of the wish fulfilled and persisting in it until the outer world bows to the inner decree. When you live in the end, you no longer look to the future for fulfillment. You no longer hope that one day it might come. You rest in the knowing that it already exists within you. This inner conviction transforms your relationship with the world. Instead of striving and waiting, you move as though the unseen reality is already seen. You feel the joy of the accomplishment, the relief of the answered prayer, the gratitude of already possessing the thing once longed for. The subconscious, which is the true power behind manifestation, accepts only what you assume to be true. When you live in desire, it registers absence. When you live in the end, it registers completion. And because the subconscious creates according to the impressions it receives, your assumption of fulfillment must externalize itself in due time. Living in the end is not daydreaming, nor is it wishful thinking. It is an active choice to inhabit the state of being where your wish is realized. It is clothing yourself in the feeling of the outcome and refusing to return to the state of wanting. This shift in consciousness is the key. For consciousness alone is the reality, and the world outside has no choice but to reflect it. The moment you stop yearning and begin dwelling in fulfillment, you align yourself with the creative law that guarantees manifestation. To live in the end is to rest in victory before the outer world shows a single sign. Trusting that the unseen cause already holds the visible effect, feel the reality of the wish fulfilled. For feeling is the bridge between the unseen and the seen, the invisible force that impresses the subconscious and compels it to externalize your assumption. Imagination alone creates, but it is feeling that gives life to the image you form within. Without feeling, your imagination remains a faint picture, a passing thought that fades away like mist. But when you clothe your vision with emotion, when you enter it with the fullness of your senses, you move from imagining as an observer to living as the participant. It is this shift that plants the seed of manifestation in the fertile soil of your being. When you feel the reality of the wish fulfilled, you are not pretending. You are aligning yourself with a higher truth, that creation is finished and all states exist now. You are simply choosing to dwell in the state where your desire is complete. To feel it real means to taste it in your mind, to hear the words that would be spoken if it were so, to sense the atmosphere of already being and having. If it is wealth, feel the security and freedom it brings. If it is love, feel the warmth and union. If it is success, feel the pride and gratitude of accomplishment. By embodying the emotions of the end, you bring the unseen reality into the now. This is the secret Neville revealed assumption sustained by feeling inevitably hardens into fact. It does not matter if the outer world shows no evidence, for outer evidence is only the echo of past states. The moment you saturate yourself with the inner reality, the change is set in motion. The subconscious accepts what you feel to be real, and once accepted, it must project itself outward as circumstances, opportunities, and events aligning to fulfill your state. You need not strain or force, you need only surrender to the sensation of already being. In that surrender, you quiet the questioning mind that asks how or when, and instead you rest in the assurance that it is already so. This inner rest is the proof of true faith, for faith is not hoping, it is knowing. To feel the reality of the wish fulfilled is to know within yourself that nothing can prevent its expression. The outer world may delay, but it cannot deny, for the inner world is the only true cause. So close your eyes to appearances and open the door to feeling. Let yourself dwell in the emotions of fulfillment until they become more natural to you than the evidence of the senses. Live in that feeling day after day, moment after moment, until the subconscious accepts it without resistance. Then watch as the world bends, reshaping itself to mirror the state you have chosen, proving that what you feel inwardly with conviction must one day take form outwardly. Imagination impresses the subconscious, which creates reality, for the subconscious mind is the silent power that governs all expression of life. It is not creative on its own. It simply accepts impressions and brings them forth into form. The tool by which you impress this power is imagination, for imagination is the act of shaping and directing thought beyond the limits of the physical senses. The outer world may present facts, but imagination dares to see beyond those facts, to claim new possibilities, and to live in states unseen. Whatever picture you consistently hold within your imagination, charged with feeling, the subconscious receives as truth, and because it is impartial and bound by law, it externalizes that picture without question. The relationship between imagination and the subconscious is the relationship between cause and effect. Imagination is the cause, the seed planted in the soil, while the subconscious is the fertile ground that nurtures it and brings forth the harvest. If you imagine lack, fear, or limitation, the subconscious accepts those impressions and creates conditions that mirror them. If you imagine abundance, love, and success, the subconscious likewise accepts those impressions and shapes your world accordingly. It does not reason, it does not argue, it does not discriminate between good or bad, possible or impossible. It simply gives form to what has been impressed upon it. To understand this truth is to understand the very key to creation. You are not a victim of circumstances, nor are you bound by conditions outside of you. You are the master of your fate because you are the master of your imagination. When you persist in imagining the end you desire, when you clothe that vision with the feeling of reality, the subconscious registers it as fact and begins to orchestrate every detail needed to bring it about. Events, people, opportunities, and even seeming coincidences are drawn into alignment to fulfill what was once only an inner picture. This is why Neville taught that imagination is the only reality. The outer world, with all its solidity, is but the shadow of inner states. What you see today is not permanent truth, but yesterday's imagination hardened into fact. Change the imagination and you change the fact. To live consciously is to deliberately choose the images you impress upon the subconscious, refusing to dwell upon appearances and choosing instead to persist in the unseen end. When you practice this, you realize that creation is effortless in its essence. You do not need to strain to force results. Your work is only to imagine with conviction and persistence. The subconscious does the rest. Just as a seed planted in the ground germinates and grows without your interference, so does an impression planted in the subconscious unfold into reality without your struggle. Your task is to plant wisely, to imagine nobly, and to persist in the assumption of the wish fulfilled until it becomes natural. Imagination impresses the subconscious, which creates reality, and this is the eternal law of life. Everything you have experienced, every circumstance surrounding you, every success or struggle, is the outpicturing of what was once imagined. To transform your world, you must transform your inner vision. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, live in its reality inwardly, and refuse to be swayed by appearances, you impress upon the subconscious the seed of a new world, and the subconscious, faithful and unchanging, will bring it forth as your living experience. Persistence in the inner vision guarantees outer change, because the outer world is nothing more than the reflection of inner states, and states are sustained through the persistence of imagination. What you hold within yourself, what you repeatedly assume and return to in consciousness, becomes the blueprint from which life constructs your reality. It may not appear immediately, for the outer world is bound by time and sequence. But if you remain steadfast in the end you have chosen, the outer world has no choice but to conform. Persistence is the secret, for a fleeting wish or momentary vision carries little weight, but an assumption lived in, revisited, and saturated with feeling becomes unshakable truth within you, and the subconscious, once impressed, faithfully reproduces it as fact. To persist in the inner vision means you no longer measure results by appearances. You refuse to be discouraged when circumstances seem unchanged, for you understand that appearances are merely echoes of past assumptions, fading shadows of yesterday's state. The true cause lies not in what you see, but in what you sustain inwardly. When you close your eyes and dwell again in the scene of the wish fulfilled, when you make it so natural that it feels more real than the world outside, you are rewriting the script of your life. The subconscious accepts repeated impressions, and through persistence you drive the vision so deeply that it becomes the only reality it recognizes. This persistence requires discipline of attention, For the mind is easily swayed by doubt, fear, and the evidence of the senses. Yet discipline is not forceful effort. It is gentle but unwavering focus. Every time the old state arises, every time doubt whispers or appearances contradict, you deliberately return to your vision. You choose again the feeling of already being, already having, already living the reality you desire. With each return, the impression deepens, and the subconscious moves more powerfully to externalize it. The outer world often tempts you to abandon your assumption. It demands proof, it shouts impossibility, it confronts you with conditions that seem immovable. But persistence is the refusal to bow to those appearances. It is the quiet certainty that the inner world is the only true reality, and that the outer must, by law, reshape itself in harmony with your sustained vision. When you persist, you move from hoping to knowing, from wishing to assuming, from desire to fulfillment. This inner knowing is the seed of manifestation, and persistence is the watering of that seed until the harvest appears. Think of the countless times you may have shifted states unconsciously, dwelling on fear until it manifested as difficulty, or clinging to doubt until opportunities slipped away. Persistence works in both directions. It is a law, impartial and unchanging, and it brings forth whatever you hold most steadily. To use it consciously is to take command of your destiny. Choose your vision wisely, persist in it faithfully, and the world cannot resist the force of your assumption. Persistence does not mean strain or effort, but steadfastness. It is the quiet act of living inwardly in the end regardless of delay. You may return again and again to your chosen scene, reliving it in imagination until it becomes second nature. Soon you no longer try to believe, it becomes automatic, as natural as breathing. When the assumption becomes natural, manifestation is inevitable, for the subconscious now carries it as fact and begins to orchestrate life to reflect it. So long as you persist, the outcome is certain. The law cannot fail, for it is unchanging and exact. The world is plastic to your sustained inner vision, and no circumstance is too great to withstand the power of persistence. Hold firmly to your inner picture, live daily in its reality, and refuse to abandon it no matter how long the shadow of the old remains. In time, the shadow dissolves and the new light emerges, proving that persistence in the inner vision always guarantees outer change. Manifestation is complete the moment you assume, for assumption is not a process of slowly becoming, but the immediate acceptance of a new state of being. The instant you dare to take upon yourself the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the act of creation is finished. All that remains is the outpicturing, the unfolding of events and circumstances that align with the state you have entered. The world you see is nothing but a mirror reflecting inner consciousness, and once that consciousness shifts, the reflection must inevitably change. To wait for proof before assuming is to reverse the law, for proof follows assumption, never precedes it. The mind often struggles with this, for it has been trained to believe in time, effort, and gradual results. Yet consciousness operates outside of time. An assumption is an immediate act of creation. When you step into the state of already being, already having, already experiencing the reality desired, you bypass the limitations of waiting and claim your desire as present fact. In that very moment, the subconscious mind is impressed, and the pattern for manifestation is set. The delay you perceive in the outer world is not a delay in creation, but only the time it takes for the shadow of the old state to fade and the new state to become visible. To understand that manifestation is complete the moment you assume is to free yourself from anxiety and striving. You no longer live in constant expectation or in restless hoping. Instead, you rest in the knowing that it is already done. This inner rest is faith, the assurance of things unseen, the conviction of realities not yet visible to the senses. Faith is not a weak wish, but the certainty that because you have assumed, it already exists. The subconscious, once impressed, must faithfully reproduce your assumption as outer fact. It is not a matter of if, but only of when, and that when is determined by the intensity and naturalness of your assumption. Assumption means inhabiting the state of the wish fulfilled inwardly with such conviction that you no longer question it. You see yourself as the one who has, not as the one who hopes to have. You feel the joy, the relief, the gratitude of completion, and you let those feelings dominate your inner world. The mind may try to argue. Appearances may seem contradictory, but if you hold fast to the state of assumption, the outer world will eventually bend to reflect it. You are never waiting for creation, for creation is finished the moment you assume. You are only waiting for the outer mirror to catch up with your inner reality. This truth demands persistence, for the outer world often reflects the old state long after you have shifted within. But if you understand that manifestation was already complete at the moment of assumption, you do not waver. You no longer uproot the seed by doubting whether it is growing. You hold the vision, dwell in the end, and walk in the quiet confidence that the invisible has already been accomplished. The visible must follow, for the law cannot fail. When you assume, you are not trying to make something happen. You are declaring that it has already happened. You are aligning with the eternal truth that all states exist now, and by assumption you select the one you wish to experience. Once selected, it is yours, and the world will rearrange itself to match. This rearrangement may appear as a sequence of events, but the end is already secured. The outer journey is only the unfolding of what has already been chosen inwardly. To live by this principle is to live free of struggle. You no longer chase results, nor do you despair over appearances. You assume and then you rest. You persist only in maintaining the assumption, not in trying to force results. This shift of consciousness is liberation, for you recognize that the creative act is complete in the moment of assumption, and nothing in the outer world can withhold from you what you have already claimed within. Manifestation is not about effort, waiting, or pleading. It is about knowing. The moment you assume, the end is secured, and the law of consciousness ensures its expression. Hold to your assumption, refuse to be swayed by temporary appearances, and let the world mirror the inner truth you have already embraced. All creation is finished, and your assumption is the key that selects which finished state becomes your living reality. The outer world bends to your inner conviction, because the world you see is not independent of you, but is the projection of your innermost beliefs and assumptions. Life is a mirror that reflects consciousness, and consciousness is shaped by what you persist in feeling and believing to be true. Many live thinking the world is fixed, that circumstances and conditions are beyond their control, yet all the while they are unconsciously creating through the convictions they carry within. The outer world is pliable, yielding, and obedient to the state you occupy inwardly. The stronger and more natural your conviction becomes, the more swiftly and completely the world rearranges itself to echo it back to you. Conviction is not mere wishing, nor is it weak desire. Conviction is the deep inner knowing that a thing is already so. It is a settled assumption, a state of being that does not waver with appearances or outward evidence. When you adopt a conviction, you do not argue with the outer world, nor do you hope it changes. You already know within yourself that it has changed, that it is done, that you are the one who has. This knowing is the force that bends circumstances, moves people, and draws into your orbit the conditions that harmonize with your inner state. The outer world cannot resist conviction, because conviction is the language of the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not respond to fleeting wishes or half-believed affirmations. It responds to the feeling of certainty. When you repeat a state long enough, when you persist in assuming it as natural, the subconscious accepts it as law. Once accepted, it works tirelessly and invisibly to manifest that conviction in your outer world. The subconscious controls the functions of the body, the unfolding of circumstances, the movement of events, and the magnetism of opportunities, and it does so based on the convictions impressed upon it. To understand this is to see why Neville said that imagination, sustained by feeling, creates reality. The outer world bends because it is not solid or final, but fluid and ever-changing. What appears fixed is only the hardened shadow of old beliefs. The moment you shift inwardly, the process of outer change begins. This change may not always be immediate, for the old state often lingers like an echo, but persistence in the new conviction guarantees that the shadow dissolves and the new form emerges. It is not a matter of forcing or struggling with the outer world, For the outer world has no power of its own. It is only a reflection. Your work is to maintain the inner conviction until the reflection catches up. Consider how conviction shapes even the smallest details of life. A person who inwardly knows they are loved radiates confidence and warmth, and the world responds with affection and kindness. A person who inwardly believes they are overlooked will often find themselves ignored, for their conviction molds their manner, their actions, and even the responses they elicit. The same law governs greater desires: wealth, success, health, relationships. If you assume and persist in the conviction that you already are the person who possesses these things, your world must bend to make it so. This bending of the outer world is not magic or chance but law. It is the law of consciousness, the principle that consciousness is the only reality and that the outer follows the inner unfailingly. Doubt this law, and you see only chaos. Live by this law, and you see order, power, and predictability. The difference lies not in the world, but in your conviction. As you believe, so it is done unto you. As you persist, so the world reflects. To cultivate conviction, you must learn the art of detachment from appearances. Appearances are always the past made visible. If you allow them to dictate your belief, you remain bound to what has already been. Conviction requires that you look within, closing your eyes to the evidence of the senses and choosing to dwell in the unseen end. You must live there so fully that it becomes more real to you than the world outside. With each return to that inner vision, with each choice to feel its reality, the conviction deepens. Eventually, the state becomes so natural that you no longer question it. And once it is natural, the world has no choice but to conform. Persistence is the fuel of conviction. A single assumption may flicker and die if it is not revisited. But when you return to it day after day, moment after moment, it grows strong and immovable. The subconscious does not resist repetition, it thrives on it. Just as habits are formed by repetition, so convictions are solidified by repeated assumption. Every time you dwell in the end, every time you assume the wish fulfilled, you are carving a deeper channel in the subconscious until it flows effortlessly in that direction. When you understand that the outer world bends to your inner conviction, you cease the futile effort of trying to manipulate conditions directly. You no longer attempt to force people to change, nor do you chase after results. Instead, you go to the root cause. You assume the state within, and you persist until the state becomes conviction. The world outside then bends without resistance, aligning itself with the truth you have chosen to carry. This law is absolute and impartial. It does not favor one person over another, nor does it discriminate between great or small desires. It simply reflects conviction. Whether you hold within yourself the conviction of limitation or of abundance, the world will confirm it. Whether you assume health or illness, love or rejection, success or failure, the outer world will bend accordingly. To live consciously, then, is to choose your convictions with intention, to persist in the noble and life-giving assumptions, and to refuse to dwell in the states that no longer serve you. The outer world bends to your inner conviction, not because the world has power to choose, but because it has no power at all. Its only role is to mirror the inner man. Change the inner man, and you change the world. Assume the state, persist in the vision, let it deepen into conviction, and watch as the circumstances of your life, once thought immovable, yield and reshape themselves to the truth you have dared to hold within. Give 35 minutes of pure faith and see the shift, for faith is the unseen substance of all things, the invisible power that shapes what is yet to appear. Faith is not passive hope, nor is it timid wishing. It is the living certainty that what you hold inwardly is already yours. In just 35 minutes of undivided attention, when your whole being is absorbed in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you can plant the seed of transformation so deeply in the subconscious mind that your world begins to rearrange itself to reflect it. The length of time is not the key, but the intensity of belief you bring into that space, the purity of your focus, and the refusal to let doubt intrude. Those 35 minutes, when lived in complete faith, carry more power than years of half-hearted hoping. For in that sacred interval, you step into the creative act itself and claim the end as already done. During those moments, You must turn away from the noise of appearances. The outer world may shout its contradictions, reminding you of lack, limitation, or failure, but faith pays no attention to appearances. Faith sees what the senses cannot. It hears the words that have not yet been spoken. It feels the joy that has not yet been expressed. It knows the outcome that has not yet unfolded. For 35 minutes, close your eyes to the shadows of the past and the illusions of the present, and enter fully into the scene of your fulfilled desire. Walk in that scene as though it were the only reality. Feel it so deeply that the world outside loses its hold upon you, and your subconscious mind, impressionable and faithful, accepts it as law. In those minutes, you are not pretending, you are not daydreaming or playing make-believe. You are creating, for creation takes place in consciousness, not in matter. Matter is only the reflection of consciousness, the shadow cast by the inner state. To give 35 minutes of pure faith is to imprint the subconscious with a new state of being, and once imprinted, it must express outwardly. The subconscious does not argue with your vision, nor does it question whether it is possible. It accepts whatever is impressed upon it through feeling and repetition. And because it governs all expression of life, it sets in motion the unseen processes by which your inner assumption becomes outer fact. Consider how the world has been shaped by faith throughout history. Every invention, every discovery, every work of art was first an unseen vision in the mind of its creator. The world may have laughed, doubted, or resisted, but the creator who persisted in faith saw the outer world bend to the inner conviction. The same law applies to you. Your life is not bound by chance or by the conditions around you. It is bound only by the faith you dare to hold and sustain. Give 35 minutes of pure faith to your desire, and you will witness the beginnings of that same shift, for you are the creator of your experience through the assumptions you sustain. Faith is the secret bridge that connects imagination to reality. Without faith, imagination remains a faint image, a passing shadow that never takes root. With faith, imagination becomes substance, living and active, capable of shaping the outer world. This is why Neville taught that feeling is the secret. To feel the reality of the wish fulfilled is to clothe your imagination with faith, to make it so real within that the subconscious cannot distinguish it from fact. 35 minutes of such feeling, sustained without wavering, is enough to impress the deepest levels of your being, and once impressed, the outcome is inevitable. During those 35 minutes, let nothing disturb you. Withdraw from the world of facts, silence the chatter of the mind, and surrender completely to the end you desire. Do not analyze how it will come to pass, for the how is not your concern. The path will unfold on its own once the end is secured within. Your only task is to dwell in the end, to feel the joy of already being, already having, already living the reality you seek. Let gratitude fill you as though it were already accomplished, and let relief wash over you as though the struggle were finished. This state of faith is the true creative act, and it requires only your willingness to enter it and persist in it for those sacred minutes. The world may insist that change takes effort, action, and time, but faith bypasses all these limitations. Faith is immediate, for it claims the result now, not in the future. When you live in the end with full conviction, you have already secured the outcome. The outer world must eventually reflect that conviction, for it is nothing but the mirror of your inner state. The delay between assumption and manifestation is not delay in creation. It is only the time it takes for the shadow of the old to dissolve and the new reflection to appear. Yet the creative act itself was complete in the moment of assumption, and faith is the proof of that completion. To give 35 minutes of pure faith each day is to transform the course of your life. It is not the quantity of time, but the quality of attention that matters. Even a single session of deep, unwavering faith can plant the seed of destiny, for the subconscious, once impressed, never fails to bring forth its harvest. Persistence in this practice only strengthens the impression, ensuring that the new state becomes more natural than the old, until eventually you no longer try to believe, you simply know. And once you know, the world has no choice but to conform. Imagine the power of this practice if you made it your habit. 35 minutes of daily faith, focused entirely on the end desired, would reshape your inner world and in turn, your outer circumstances. Every area of life, health, wealth, love, success, would begin to reflect the convictions you sustained in those minutes. For the law is impartial, unfailing, and exact as within, so without. The world cannot resist the force of sustained faith, for faith is the creative principle itself. So give yourself those 35 minutes. Let them be sacred, undisturbed, and filled with the feeling of already being fulfilled. Let doubt be silenced, let appearances be ignored, and let faith reign supreme in your imagination. In those minutes, you step into the role of creator, selecting the reality you choose to live. Persist, and you will see the shift, for the law cannot fail. The outer world, though it may seem firm and unyielding, is fluid and responsive, bending always to the conviction you hold most deeply within. 35 minutes of pure faith is enough to move mountains, dissolve obstacles, and call forth the life you desire, for faith itself is the power that creates all things.